Well, hello there. My name is Ian, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I've brought three guests, including my friend Pontus, the Swedish Prog Nerd. But today we're going to talk about this new, revised and for the first time translated in English edition of Legends and Their Own Lunchtime. And with us today is the book's author, Aymeric Leroy, as well as the book's publisher, Steve Feigenbaum of Cuneiform Records. So Aymeric, my viewers are probably well aware of your website, which is Calyx. I believe that's the correct pronunciation. I thought I would just start and ask you, what drew you to this subject in the first place?
Well, first, we usually pronounce it Calyx, but I think it's an English thing. It's probably different between Brits and Americans. But anyway, I discovered this music in the late 80s when I was a teenager. And I think the first thing I heard was Rock Bottom, actually, by Robert Wyatt, which someone gave me a tape that had Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow on the other side. So it was a strange mix, but I grew to like it, despite the strange vocals. I grew to love them, actually, over time, and this album in particular. And I then investigated everyone who played on the record. So there was Hugh Hopper, Richard Sinclair, and even Fred Frith and others. So starting from there, I discovered Caravan and other bands. And I was into prog already at the time, but I had a liking for jazz that drew me to the Canterbury scene because it was the best of all worlds for me, because I like my prog well composed and structured, but I also like a bit of improvisation and the kind of jazz harmonies and jazz instrumentation that you find in bands like Soft Machine and Hatfield and the North. So these quickly became my favorites of these particular bands, and the Canterbury scene, a special favorite of mine within the prog realm, so to speak.
So when it came around to revise this book and to translate it into English, of course, that's where Cuneiform got in. And Steve, this is your first time releasing a book, correct?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
and it's funny because it's different. Well, for one thing, I have reasonable distribution for a record label, and I looked into book distribution, and it's really not very easy, or the people who distribute, at least in the US, independent books, there's one big company whose name I forget, because they're really not interested in taking on something that's a one shot. I mean, the fact that I've got 549 CD releases out before this, it doesn't mean anything to them. It's like, oh, your first book, huh, kid? So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I've known Aymeric since late 90s. I don't know how long.
Even before that, actually. Okay. I first interviewed you when you did Unsettled Scores. That would have been around 95.
A long time ago. I didn't remember. Oh, for Big Bang.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we talked about it because it's like, well, Aymeric, I can't. It's not practical for me to it's not going to be in Amazon in the USA, and it's probably not going to be in bookstores. And it's probably, does that bother you? And it didn't bother him. So it was like, okay, let's, I mean, I'm used to rolling the dice with releases. So this was just rolling the dice about a different thing.
Yeah, well, to me, it made a lot of sense because, of course, there's always been like a literary aspect of some of these reissues that you've done, and going back to older recordings, putting them out for the same time. And viewers of my channel, of course, will be aware of this project here, Hobo Code in 1971 from the Soft Machine, as well as Facelift, France and Holland, which was the first time that I collaborated with the two of you. I worked on the audio restoration and cleanup and mastering.
Wasn't the Dutch lesson a little before?
I think the Dutch lesson may have been the first thing I did with you guys, and it's upstairs. And I think it may have come out after.
And it's not on vinyl.
And it's not on vinyl, so I can't. It's not as fun to show.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy this book comes out in a language I can understand, because it'd been in French before, and my French lessons was always hampered by the fact that the teacher was also a member of the local jazz club, and she used to tell me weird stories about Jacob Astorius all the time. So my French is very bad, but I quickly came into this music through many things. And I really love your passion for this music. I mean, it really shows that you know, you're into and really want to dive deep in to this corner of progressive rock, which is a way off corner to many people. I mean, once you hit Soft Head, for instance, you're way off Soft Machine, you're way off Pink Floyd, you're way off the trodden path, so to speak. You're very deep. And I totally respect that, because it's really... I want to know, do you still find new things about this sort of community of bands that you, if you've been studying them since the 80s, I mean, have you discovered new things when you sat down with the book and revised it that you didn't know before?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, if you're talking about differences between the French and English edition, there's additional material that I got from further research. Like, for instance, I took a subscription to a newspaper site, which led me to articles about some very early goings-on on the scene, like all the Saint-Tropez periods and the very early days, where I came across some interesting articles that were buried in the local press, like in the US or elsewhere. And so, I mean, the updating was, I did everything I could to make the book even more accurate and up to date. So that included a few things like that.
That was a common comment that I got on the unboxing video and also the announcement video that I made, is like, this isn't a new book. It's a translation. And that's something that became very apparent to me as I was reading through. It's like, oh, they're talking about, like you mentioned, stuff that came out within the last couple of years, and you were updating things. So it's interesting to me to know that you did further research as well as simply just updating some dates and stuff like that. Now, I'm glad that Pontus mentioned the point about community, because the cross-pollination that occurs among these different groups is one of the things that I find most fascinating. And it kind of amazed me how this book is assembled as a timeline where, you know, like right now I'm in the middle of 1973, which is maybe the most fascinating chapter yet. And
that was a very good year for Canterbury music.
Yes. And
everybody was
bouncing directly, you know, between Robert Wyatt is disillusioned with Matching Mole. Hatfield and the North are starting to come together out of Delivery. And you've got Gong about to record what I mean, my favorite three albums, the Flying Teapot trilogy. So I was just wondering, how did you keep all this straight? How did you keep a thorough, like a through line narrative to tie all this material together?
Well, it was the difficult thing for the book. I toyed with various ways of putting that material together. Initially, I went the way of doing separate chapters on each band, and it didn't work. So in the end, the chronological thread seemed the best idea, and it fitted the subject quite well, because it's all intertwined, as you say. It's the family tree is quite absurdly complex, and people going from one band to the other, and forming bands with like members of Hatfield and Soft Machine forming bands together, all that sort of stuff. So it was really appropriate, I think, for this particular scene. And also, each entry in the chronology somehow matches a certain album. So the way the book is organized is also as a companion to listening to the albums. Each chapter is sort of a set of liner notes for an album you can listen to. Sometimes I think of this book as a giant set of liner notes.
Well, yeah, I was about to mention that. I mean, I was kind of alluding to that earlier, that you've, of course, provided liner notes for Cuneiform releases over the years. So there always has been kind of like this, there's reading material, but then there's also listening material. And I found that my appreciation of both your book, the story that you're telling, and the music itself deepened as I was going back and forth and listening to these albums. And another thing that I wanted to point out, and Steve, you can also comment on this because I think it's very important, is I love how you included some of the supplementary material that's come out on Cuneiform, like the Facelift, France and Holland CD and DVD and the different releases. And I love the way that you were able to put those in the proper context. This, for me, coming at it as just, working on this material. I love how you use those to make a more complete picture of the era.
Well, obviously, I mean, because he did it as a timeline, even though Facelift, France and Holland came out in 2022 or whatever, it fits right into early 1970. So that's where it goes, kind of plug it.
Yeah, and the music that's on this release was in the French edition discussed as the previous release, so it made sense to simply update that reference to the most current release of that material. Especially that particular release was much expanded and improved from the previous release. So
I'm so glad you said that.
Me too.
Would you say that if you come into this book, you're already a fan? Or can you come into this book and become a fan?
Well, it was a point of balance that I had to set early on. Was I going to make a book for the newcomer or for the patented fan, whatever? And I decided that I would still include, as making it accessible to anyone, but not give up on the idea of going in depth, about all this stuff. So it's up to the listener to decide what level of detail they want to go into regarding a specific release. Of course, I don't think a book this thick or in depth is going to appeal to just the passing stranger, but I wanted to use as much of the material I'd collected, which was of interest to me, and hopefully people who would get the book would enjoy the level of precision in research and discussion of the music.
Because one thing I felt very interesting was when you, at the very beginning of the book, you talk about the what is the Canterbury scene and what is the Canterbury sound. And you describe it, if I remember correctly, as both accessible, but also something that is, takes you very intellectual term, right? I would always say, personally, I would say that it is prog with all the unusual, the prog without the unnecessary fat, because it has this sort of, it spans from Caravan's pop, like Love to Love You, to something like Soft Heap, which is free jazz.
It's not free jazz. Oh, you mean Soft Heap, the later one? Yeah. Yeah,
the later one. It goes from this very accessible thing to a very, very extravagant thing that you have to really sit and listen to. Mm-hmm. And then you have Hatfield and North in the middle, which is sort of a cross between all of it, or National Health, or So how would you describe the sound if you jazzy prog?
I mean, I think that I don't think that anyone would say that soft heap fits into Canterbury, at least the later free thing, except for the fact of the pedigree of the musicians, So, I mean, they're there because they also did this, but I mean, you wouldn't use them to explain, I don't think, as an example of the Canterbury sound. And the problem with something like the Canterbury sound is it's ultimately kind of meaningless. It's sort of indefinable. And I mean, if you want to be strict, it's Caravan and Soft Machine and absolutely nobody else.
Yeah.
But then we wouldn't have a book.
No. I mean, I always think, and I've been thinking about it, I've been listening to progressive music for the last 40 years now.
Don't use the term prog.
Okay.
It's a word.
I use the word funny music because that's what Covers to Robbie does.
Term prog. Progressive music is great. Thank you.
Okay, progressive music. I've been listening to progressive music or funny music, as Covers to Robbie used to say.
Funny music is a good one too.
Yeah. But it's one thing that strikes me is how on earth everybody around that tiny island, or not so tiny, but the island of England, could be so goddamn, they were so talented. They were so talented. They know how to play music. They could play very well. They could write very well. And you suddenly have musicians that were virtuosos and certainly could think beyond the box, but all these things. And it comes across with these bands as well. You have a multi-talent like Robert Wyatt, or someone like David Stewart I, or Alan Gowan, and they play this music, and it's very sort of, it's not mainstream. It never goes to become the music of the that everybody knows and loves, the Genesis or Yes or whatever. But they're still going at it, and they really deliver something that is really, really fantastic. And that's why I wonder what all that talent came from, what all these ideas came from. This, it just occurs to me that is something that is very interesting.
You could say the same thing about what was happening in Sweden at the same time.
Yeah, perhaps. Sure.
No, I think you could. I mean, it's just like, if people are given the opportunity, the 70s, that period was kind of an interesting time, and not strictly in England, for music that was a little bit further out. And that, I would be happy to discuss that sometime, although I don't think it's really so germane to the, but if you give creative people a chance to be creative, and they can devote, like, they don't have to have a job that depletes them of their energy and their will to live, but they are able to have a job of being creative and performing and whatever. I mean, I think you just get more of it. And I think that's got more to do, I think, with the 70s than there were these so incredibly talented people from England. I mean, I think it's just that there was an ability for them to reach a bigger and more popular audience than there is for similar musics now, for a variety of reasons.
An audience that listened. And
yes, and also general context, like the Virgin Records label was very important at what point, and in the early days some major labels were involved as well. like CBS or Decca, which were very big labels at the time, and that's part of what makes it popular or popularized, because there's labels to put it out and magazines and publications to
maybe feature it, and radio to maybe play it, you know, and venues that will let it be on stage. I mean, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. But I would agree that there was something uniquely English about it, though. I mean, there's a certain sense of humor, a certain eccentricity that sets it apart from prog and everything else, actually. Because we talk about it from the prog-centric angle, but people can approach it from jazz. I mean, this music was really important to jazz musicians at the time, who never listened to progressive rock as such. So it's a coming together of various strands of music and different audiences as well.
Yeah, and you know, I got the sense from reading the book that it was somewhat of an uphill battle to promote this music back then. I mean, like you talk about how hard it was for Egg to even maintain their recording contract at the time.
Well, they didn't make it easy for themselves because their music was quite radical as well. It was self-consciously uncommercial. So it was a time when you could get away with making uncommercial music. And I guess a lot of these people also believed that this was the music of the future, that commercial music was going to become a thing of the past. And people would listen to 30-minute suites of very complex time signatures and sophisticated harmonies. And for a while, there was a whole scene that was successful enough to sustain itself. But that was very much the context of the 70s. Yeah. In the following decades, it moved to smaller structures like Steve's label and others. It was no longer CBS and Virgin turned their attention elsewhere.
Something else that I thought was interesting, you know, you go back to the Wildflowers, who, when I was talking about the cross-pollination, hey, that's a really good pun, isn't it? The Wildflowers? Anyway. So you start with the Wildflowers, and you have, correct me if I'm wrong, but was David Allen involved with the Wildflowers at one point? Okay, but he joined Soft Machine early on, but that was where Pi Hastings and Robert Wyatt met. And, you know, you kind of get this feeling from this era that, you know, not only do you have, like Pontus pointed out, like really complex and intricate music, but you have very imaginative and creative people backing it. Like a group like Gong is a universe of its own. Like you could write a book of this length on just Gong alone.
David Allen wasn't in the Wildflowers, but he was involved in an earlier band. That was the David Allen Trio. Yeah. And the rhythm section for that was Hugh Hopper and Robert Wyatt in '63. And they went on to form the Wildflowers, which is interesting in itself because David Allen Trio was free jazz, radical free jazz. And then David went elsewhere, went to France for a bit. And Hugh Hopper and Robert Wyatt went to the Wildflowers, which was originally a rock and roll band, which turned into sort of a soul band, playing a mixture of original material and covers. And if you listen to their demos, there's only the vaguest inkling of what they were going to do.
I'm glad you said that because I remember when the Wildflowers came out. I mean, you know, I've been a Canterbury fan forever, and it's like, oh my God, I get the Wild, you know, wow. And it's like, these guys can't play. This isn't good. This is not,
too early.
This is all my heroes. It's like, boy, they got good quick or something. Because you know.
Yeah, that's the 60s, beginning with jazz and moving to blues and rock and ending with progressive music. It was a gradual process, and including for the bands of getting better at playing their instruments and getting more original, digesting their influences. Yeah. So yeah, there was a big progression.
Yeah. And you get the sense, like from reading the book, that they didn't really borrow that much from other English rock bands. Like maybe Pink Floyd, just by association. with some of those groups, the Middle Earth Club, but I don't remember much discussion of like Yes or Genesis influencing the likes of Robert Wyatt. Like,
no, of course not.
Jazz and much more interesting and esoteric stuff.
They were around earlier, actually. I mean,
sure.
Pink Floyd might have influenced, like David Allen was influenced by Syd Barrett's guitar technique, but they were probably more influenced by bands like Jimi Hendrix Experience or Traffic.
Definitely.
Bands that were there in '67 already, because all the other bands you mentioned were formed a bit later down the line.
It sets this scene, I think, apart creatively, kind of looping back to what Pontus said about how unique this is. I think that just talking about the influences alone, it sets this apart uniquely. And then you get to bands like Health and earlier Hatfield and North. And at this point, I think you have like the earliest, what you would call like a Canterbury supergroup coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a band like Hatfield was influenced by previous Canterbury Scene music. So at that point, they were influenced by their own family, so to speak. Whereas the founding members had a set of influences that dated back to the previous generation. That is a lot of jazz. That's probably what set them apart from the rest of the progressive rock scene in England. There was a stronger jazz influence, and it's quite separate in that respect.
20th century, avant composition, more so than, progressive rock bands like Yes or Genesis.
Yeah, that's quite specific to Mike Ratledge, I believe, what you're saying, because he was definitely not influenced by rock of any kind, and his influences were contemporary classical and free jazz, or avant-garde jazz.
And Hugh, with the
Terry Riley as well.
Terry Riley, yeah.
Yeah, all the tape loops on Soft Machine's Third definitely were influenced by Terry Riley. So yeah, there was a large
curve there. Yeah, there's another thing I want to talk about, because there's also this thing where these bands are based in England, but they're very many of them go off to Deia or Majorca, and in Spain. And I never understood the importance or the of Robert Graves. Could you talk a bit about him? What was his role?
He was a friend of of Robert White's family. He was a close friend of his mother, I think. And so when you live in Britain, you enjoy the sunshine that's prevalent in other countries because they don't have so much of their own. So to have a friend who's living in Mallorca and has a friend and has a house that can welcome you and your friends, I mean, it became a destination for all these folks who wanted a bit of sunshine. So there's no other real reason for the scene to have ended up. I mean, Soft Machine's foundation really happened in Deia, but that was a coincidence, really. I mean, there's more to discuss, I think, about the fact that the Canterbury Scene found an audience in France and the Netherlands. There's a more profound link there, because it really reflects the kind of musical taste of these countries that embraced this specific mixture of rock, jazz, and avant-garde ideas and surrealism.
Yeah, it's very European.
Standpoint, for instance, I think we enjoyed the surreal English humor and those aspects of that to us symbolize the English spirit that we envy in a way that is exotic to us as well.
I mean, certainly, the Soft Machine had some success in England, and Caravan had success in England, as much as they had success. Wasn't on the scale of a Yes or a Genesis, but they had success. But, the bands that came after the Hatfield in the north, and that was all. Let's go to France. We can make some money. Let's go to let's go to the Netherlands. People want to hear us there. I mean, that's very that comes across. I mean, I knew that anyway a little bit, but I mean that comes across very strongly in the book. I mean, that's where the fans are. You know, for Hatfield. I mean, they stayed alive by doing that.
Mm-hmm. And there was a network of youth centers in both countries, state subsidies as well for to keep that network going. Right. So it was an opportunity that appeared at the time, and they embraced it because it was becoming difficult for them in England, because around the same time the original circuit of pubs and small venues was changing to pub rock or early future punk.
Right.
So they weren't embraced that much, and there was more of an audience abroad on the continent, as they said.
Yeah.
So something I was just thinking about in reference to like talking earlier about the Canterbury sound. There's obviously like distorted bass, distorted organ is a big part of that. But something that I kind of realized in listening to all these groups in context of one another is the vocal style. Like you hear echoes of Robert Wyatt's style, like on those early Soft Machine records, in David Allen on those gongs, and you hear it in Richard Sinclair's voice. And I think you'd even talked about in the passage I was just reading earlier today that in, I think it is Calyx actually, you have Sinclair and Wyatt singing together. And it works so beautifully. Now, do you think that they were influenced by that? I think I know the answer to this question, but do you think those groups were influenced by that first Soft Machine record, or do you think it has more to do with something else culturally?
You mean Hatfield by influenced by Soft Machine?
Hopefully.
Well, it's an interesting thing because Richard Sinclair and Robert Wyatt were together in the original White Flowers, so they're contemporaries, really. But Richard Sinclair was a bit younger. He was 3 years younger than Robert, so he came he matured artistically, I think, a bit later. It was like second generation Caravan compared to Soft Machine, and then Hatfield in the North was very much influenced by Soft Machine's Volume 2 era. So it was just a question of 2-3 years younger as bands and individuals, but it made a lot of difference in that short time span, which means that that Hatfield is a generation lower than Soft Machine, and very much building on what they'd done. And so Robert Wyatt guesting on vocals on the first Hatfield was, I think, Robert expressing that the spirit of the Soft Machine from around the late 60s was being passed on to Hatfield, and he was moving to other styles of lyric writing, and which resulted in Rock Bottom, which he was working on even before his accident happened. So he was already moving to another direction and another approach to lyrics, because there's this whole thing of self-referential and absurd lyrics that Pip Pyle wrote for Hatfield in the North, was very much taking the baton of Robert, who had grown tired of those that approach, which was turning into a cliche somehow in his eyes, and he was moving to a more political approach or inspiration for his lyrics, and so Hatfield was very inherited both musically and lyrically from the earlier bands.
And I think a big part of it is these groups allowed themselves permission to sing in their natural English accents. And so maybe that's a huge part of that continuity in my brain. But I do appreciate that you brought up that point about Robert Wyatt feeling like he had fallen into a cliche, because there is the sense like as he leaves Soft Machine and the Matching Mole thing doesn't quite work out, that he's still trying to find his voice a little bit, maybe on his own. And he doesn't want to write his own material. He wants to be part of a band. It's this whole communal thing happening. And I confess I haven't gotten to rock bottom yet, but I'm just curious how he would have gotten to that point. I mean, disregarding the accident, but like artistically, how would he have gotten to that point where, okay, I'm now writing the lyrics, I'm now writing the words?
Well, the accident meant that he could no longer play drums. So
Sure.
is a big problem for him until then was to find a way to bring together his approaches as drummer and vocalist and songwriter, and that was too much to handle.
Yeah.
And also it was difficult for him to actually play and sing on stage at the same time. So it was quite frustrating, I think. And after he had his accident, the drumming situation was no longer on the cards, and he was free to concentrate on writing actual songs and focusing on the vocals, which until then was only possible in a studio context. Because live Matching Mole was still an electric improvising group, much like Soft Machine, with a different sound, but the vocal thing didn't really find a place in that.
Sure.
Except for his echoplexed vocal improvisations that you can hear on the live albums.
Yeah, and a little bit on the debut as well. I think there's an early track where he does a little bit of that stuff. But, that's kind of interesting because, I mean, obviously Robert's accident is tragic and sad, but it's interesting that you refer to it as it freed him up, because there was almost like this conflict inside of him between the drummer and the singer-songwriter.
Yeah, that's something he said himself, actually. But although it's hard to say when Robert talks about the accident, he tends to speak about it as a liberating event, which I think is his way of coping with the more tragic aspects of it. But it's certainly artistically, it made things simpler for him because there was no longer the option of being the drummer in an instrumental group.
Right. It took it off the table. So, if he's trying to balance these things that he can't balance because he apparently always really had trouble singing while playing.
Sure.
And the fact that one of them is gone, I can't do this anymore. So then it's, okay, I'm left with this.
One thing I think is interesting is that how much music they each band borrowed from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like Soft Machine writes backward, Hugh Hopper writes backwards, I think it is.
No,
and then in Ratledge. But then Caravan borrows that on the for girls who grow lump in the night into the Hunting We Shall Go end piece there and plays it. And also you have this riff that appears in Matching Mole's Little Red Record is often played live with Hatfield and North. I forgot the song title.
Well, that's a familiar tune anyway, so that makes sense. The more surprising thing is like Matching Mole playing Waterloo Lily by Caravan when there's no member of Caravan in the band. So
yeah, but
that's more intriguing, although it can be explained because members of all those bands were on the side playing together and in preparation for what became Hatfield and the North. But yes, there's cross-pollination, is that the right word? Between all those bands, because at that time they still had very much an interest in what each other was doing. It was before they grew into different musical directions, and Soft Machine really turned to jazz, and Caravan became more of a pop band. But around the late 60s and early 70s, they played a similar mixture of jazz and rock, and I think they were an inspiration to each other. And when Dave Sinclair rejoined Caravan for the Girls Who Go Plump in the Night album, there was this instrumental that originally had a different bit at the end, and he suggested to play backwards because he loved the tune from having heard it played by Soft Machine. So they were fans of each other. I think Dave Sinclair told me that Robert almost asked him to play on Moon in June on third. And Dave told me that he told Robert, "You're doing a great job playing the keyboards yourself. I couldn't play it any better." So it's one of those could have beens. It almost happened. And
Aymeric, I'm really glad you brought up Moon in June, because as I mentioned in our private chat earlier to this, I probably listened to Moon in June 4 or 5 times in the last couple of weeks. I'm a little bit obsessed by it. And you think about
which one, Ian?
Well, I'm talking about the third studio version, but there is, of course, the earlier version that's on the Robert Wyatt 68
and the BBC version,
which I have heard. Yeah, I'm really obsessed with this idea of the one-man band, tracking everything himself, because obviously this is 1970. I don't think that metronomes were really a thing in studios quite yet. If they were there, they were very rudimentary. It's interesting to me how Robert is able to achieve such great feel with that track. Like, I never knew that was him playing all the song, all the parts, and I never knew also that it was a remake. So, do we want to discuss Moon in June? I think that's a really important piece.
Well, you mentioned Robert's 68 CD, and there's an interview in there where I specifically asked Robert about his method for doing one-man instrumental backing tracks and then singing over them. And it's quite interesting how he did that. He was quite innovative indeed for the period, especially the version he did in 68, which was, I don't think there's many similar experiments that early on of someone recording all the instruments themselves. Ultimately, I think my favorite though is the BBC version, because I like the more polished approach that Mike Ratledge has on keyboards. So I do enjoy the piece being played by a band, each with their own mastery of their own instruments. But Robert's version is probably more original and unique. And of course, as an experiment of this kind, it's quite impressive.
But is it, if I understand it right, he plays the first part is Robert, and then there is a soft machine part where the bass comes in, where the fuzz bass comes in, and then it's cut back to sort of drone version with the violin and him singing Hat and all that stuff at the very end.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture of things, right?
He's still playing keyboards even during the organ solo, because I think I still hear Hammond underneath Mike Ratledge's Lowry organ solo. So I think there's still a mixture of his and Mike's keyboards. But yes, the first 8 or 9 minutes, it's all Robert, except for a little bit of Hugh Hopper bass at one point.
I actually was never sure if that was Hugh or if that was Robert playing bass.
Well, there's a
in that one. We're talking about the version on third, yeah.
Yeah, the version on third. There's about 3 or 4 minutes in. There's a little bass melody, and that's Hugh. And there's a note in my book that mentions that I asked Hugh to confirm that it was him. And he said, yes, it's me, and it's Robert wrote the melody, so it's not an improvised part. So that's the only bit that is not Robert on the first 8 or 9 minutes of the piece.
So, well, here's the great mystery of Moon in June is, what do you think the 1968 demo was before they added on the bit with Soft Machine? Did it just end? Was there something else? We don't know.
That's a great mystery, because Robert couldn't remember anything about, other than recording the strictly solo section, he couldn't remember anything about further sessions in New York or England. So, the others are no longer around. And Mike Ratledge was never really available to ask this sort of question. So we may never know, I'm afraid.
Because going back to the Facelift portion of Third, which is a collage really of different recordings, right?
It's not much collage.
One is Croydon, and one is there's some studio version, and then there's
but most of it is Croydon, really. I mean, very big chunks of it are Croydon.
There's a bit from Mother's Club that then goes back into Croydon, but it's not like it doesn't jump back and forth. It's not. It's not like a, there's Croydon, there's Mother's Club, there's Croydon, and then there's like the bit with the spaced tape loops, whatever, into the back to Croydon. I think the only time that Mother's Club is used is
the theme. The theme that when they played the theme the first time.
And then the only other things are how much they edited Lynn Dobson.
Yeah.
But I mean, really not that much of an assemblage. I mean, it's having heard the entire Croydon show, most of it sounds like the album. It's the album version.
Yeah, but that wasn't on the non-set.
Oh, of course not, because it's owned by Sony.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's an edit of that on something that Mike King did as a tribute to Hugh Hopper series on the Voiceprint Records. He puts, I don't think it's the complete thing, but there's a less edited version of Facelift from Croydon on one of those releases.
It's on YouTube.
Facelift.
It's on YouTube. The entire Croydon Facelift is on YouTube. It's been up for years and years.
I loved that CD. That made me understand that lineup.
You mean what?
The non-set, the Croydon gig.
Yeah.
The Cuneiform record issue that I bought.
Probably the soft machine that more people have told me they like than any other of the soft machines that we've done.
Yeah, because it's very accessible. You can hear where they're going, and where it's very interesting when they play, because at the very end they play "We Did It Again." And it's about there's the hobo bear as well, but there's very little sort of reference back to the first album or the second album. They are very much progressing as we are listening, really.
Yes, it's just after they'd actually dropped Moon in June as a song, and they're only playing the organ solo. As you said, there's still Ibu, Anemone, and Bear from Volume 2, but that's the last song that stayed in the set, and then Robert only did improvised vocals from that point. So it's one of the earliest archive releases that Steve's done on Cuneiform, and the other ones, which were recorded later, don't have any actual songs on them. It's all instrumental with some improvised vocals. So that probably makes it a bit more appealing to people who like Robert Wyatt in Soft Machine. And also it was one of the earliest archive releases, because up until that point there'd been Live at the Proms. But Noisette is really, I think, the second.
Well, no, there was Live at the Proms. There was Virtually, and then I did Noisette.
Oh, yeah, okay. Virtually came before that, yeah. But I wasn't involved, so that's before my time. I didn't write liner notes for that one. But what I meant was that there's been quite a few more since. And of course, as releases accumulate, people perhaps have less distinct favorites between them. It's the whole collection.
Well, I mean, this is kind of pointing out what Pontus said, but I mean, I don't know if it's because it's not strictly because the personnel changed, but I mean, there is really rapid change in the sets and the material. I mean, you've got the Soft Machine as the volume 2 band, the trio. They play that gig on, what is it, February 24th with Hendrix. It's their first ever show. I guess they're in the middle of recording volume 2. I'm not sure exactly what the dates are in volume 2. But, and then there's the gig at the Concertgebouw, March 29th, 1969, and they're basically doing volume 2 live. But like, I'm kind of under the impression, it's not well documented, but I think like by summer, there was very little of volume 2 left in the set. It's like all new stuff. It's all backwards and noisette and facelift and blah 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 blah. Wow.
Yeah, and obviously Esther's Nose Job remained which is a big chunk of volume 2. But you mean Rhythmic Melodies? The side one was dropped pretty early on, and actually Moon in June replaced it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So guys, we're running up close to the hour mark, and I thought I would put you, Aymeric, and Steve on the spot, and give me, for somebody who's just getting into the Canterbury scene, 5 introductory albums and 5 archival albums. Aymeric, you can go first. If you'd
Okay.
Like.
Well, I had the prop ready. I had this ready.
Oh, all right.
This is my favorite album. And the North album. I would recommend another one. I only have 2 here, but this is probably my favorite Soft Machine album. I know it's probably Steve's as well, because he asked me once what my favorite was, and I remember he seemed to like my answer that fourth was my favorite.
It's my favorite too. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Great.
fantastic. Just because I love the added brass and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would cite the first National Health album as probably my favorite. Most people prefer the second, but I just like the twin keyboards with Alan Gowan and Dave Stewart so much. Yeah, that's
just
so.
I have a copy of it on me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very close call because Of Cures and Cures is fantastic, but that's probably
but Nameless Roads is hard to beat.
Yeah, and everything else really. Rock Bottom, I think it was my personal introduction, and it's Robert Wyatt's beginnings as a solo artist, really, but that's still within the Canterbury scene, which can't be really said of his later albums, because there's still a certain amount of other people being involved. It's more of a collaborative thing than his later albums were. And the number 5 would have to be a Caravan album. So I would name the second one. If I could do it all over again, I'd do It All Over You as my favorite, because there's a lot of Jimmy Hastings on it and more expensive tracks, and it sounds like a band just playing together with less of a studio approach with overdubs. That's on The Land of Grey and Pink, which I like slightly less for that reason, because it sounds more like a studio construct. And that second album for me is the ultimate representation of what Caravan was about in the early days.
Yeah.
So I think that's 5.
Hard to disagree with your choices, Aymeric. Those are all just 10 out of 10 records for me.
Yeah.
So, Steve, talk about some archival releases you'd recommend.
Well, first of all, are we talking about I'd recommend for someone who doesn't know this stuff, or are we talking about my favorites?
I'll tell you what. Since Aymeric did introductory albums, why don't you talk about your favorites? These are like after you've gotten the big hits. Let's talk about Steve's favorites.
Well, favorite archival.
Sure. And they can be your releases, obviously.
I'm sorry?
They can be your releases, obviously.
Oh, they have to be my releases. They're not going to be any. I don't know. I mean,
Well, you can see where I'm going here.
With Aymeric choices, it's like I probably, my favorite is probably 4. If I was putting, a soft machine for, if you were asking me like, what's the best soft machine album for someone who hasn't heard, maybe Volume 2, because it has vocals and it has songs and it has, maybe in terms of Caravan, I might have said In the Land of Gray and Pink as something for someone who doesn't know them. I don't know if it's my favorite or not, but all right. So archive. Well, okay. The first thing that comes to mind, Live at the Paradiso. That's Live at the Paradiso by Soft Machine. That's a profoundly interesting record to me, because it's like you never guess that they sound like that from Volume 2. I mean, it's like you listen to Volume 2, it's like, oh, they sounded like that, but they did. I'm not quite sure how a band that sounded like that ended up with a record that sounded like Volume 2. And that's not either. It's not that one's bad and one's good. It's just they're playing the same material and it sounds utterly different, I think. Well, I don't really think that the two. I think that the two Hatfield and the North albums are so great that the archival Hatfield and the Norths can't touch them. So I'm not going to mention those because they're not. I don't think they're not favorites, but only because the others are so terrific. I'm unbelievably happy and proud of the Gilgamesh record. That was a lot. That was a lot of work, and a lot of. I got clearances from every one of the 7 musicians personally. I mean, it's like it was very interesting. I mean, it's like, I don't think I would do that nowadays. I'd just be like, oh. Alan says it's fine. Well, of course, Alan's dead, so I can't. But I wouldn't bother to get. In fact, I spoke to Neil Murray, who was very, and I remember getting his permission to do that. And he's just like, "Oh, I don't really think you need to ask me, do you?" Which was a lovely answer. But I'm very happy with the Gilgamesh record. I super like the I really like Noisette. I really like so Noisette is January of 70, and then by October of 70 with Grides, you've got a really different sound and a completely different bunch of tunes. Is there any overlap? I don't know. I'd have to think. Yeah, there's Facelift. Is there anything else? There's not much.
Out Bloody Rageous, maybe. Yeah.
Out Bloody Rageous isn't on Noisette, is it? No.
No, it's not.
Oh no, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's like, wow. I mean, that was kind of what I was alluding to with how quickly it changed. That there's nothing left from 9 months earlier. Okay. I don't know. There's a lot of good ones.
What about March? Matching More March. That's a real favorite of mine.
It's not.
I think it's not.
It's not a favorite of mine. Mm-hmm. It's not a personal. It came out great. Got Robert to say nice things about it on the inside. That's Well, and 68. 68 mm-hmm. is like. Just because it's this. Like mythical thing. Look, Aymeric the guy. Aymeric knows everything, and it's like, did you ever think to hear those other 2 demos?
I thought they were lost forever.
Yes, I thought they were lost forever. I remember how lost the Moon in June. Before, later, the first version of Moon in June that's on the original version of Backwards that we did, that was from Chris Cutler's acetate that he got. I guess, did he get it from Robert? Robert gave it to him, I guess, the only one he had, whatever. And it had paint And there, the original on backwards, I mean, there's gaps, there's little bits missing that Mike King had to like cut because there was stuff missing because trying to pry paint off so that it would, just skip all over the place. And then later through, good Lord, for God's sake, the light show.
Mark Boyle, yeah.
Mark
Boyle told me he had the tape, and then there was some contact that led to it being retrieved.
He sent the tape, which it probably is just a recording of the acetate earlier, but it's much better sounding and it's complete, So, but yeah, 68 was a great play. I couldn't believe that it showed up. I couldn't believe it was offered to me. I couldn't believe that Robert was as enthusiastic as he was. It's always, hey, Robert Wyatt showing enthusiasm. This isn't really about the book. I think Aymeric's heard this story. Robert's always been extremely nice, but Robert is kind of allergic to his past, or at least he likes to pretend to be. And I sent him one of the releases. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was backwards. And he was excited. I guess he was in the right mood, and he played it. And my phone rings, and it's Robert. And he's really excited, and he's really happy. And he goes, "What, Steve? I just played what you said. Fuck me! I was a great drummer once." And it was like, "Yes, you were."
It certainly was.
And that's a cuneiform release with Jimi Hendrix on it.
Yeah,
which must be a source of pride as well.
Which I had to run by my attorney, who told me, "Does he play guitar?" And it's like, no. It's like, yeah, it's probably okay. Nobody cares.
Yeah, that's one. But do you think? My question is: do you think there's more to come out of the archives? Because there's been a plethora of people releasing. You've been releasing stuff. Voice print release stuff. There is this sort of floating world.
I'm sorry. There's this. The floating world is voice print. Anyway, the thing is that there is more things, but I mean, the ones that there are more things, and the ones that I know of, and Aymeric should say about the ones he knows of, if he thinks differently, they're not available for specific reasons, or they're not very good quality, and is a problem.
Yeah.
Certainly
it depends on whether musicians are happy to have a lot of unreleased material coming out. Like people like Hugh Hopper, Elton Dean never really minded that archive releases came out. People like Dave Stewart, on the other hand,
right,
not liking.
Yeah, he doesn't. Right, he didn't.
Yeah,
want
there could be National Health and Hat from the North live releases, but he prefers not to, which is his prerogative, I guess. But that explains the radical differences between the catalogs of Soft Machine and other bands. Depends on whether the artists are willing to have things released.
Yes, I mean, that's completely true. I wasn't even thinking about the artists not wanting them. I was just thinking, I was thinking specifically of Soft Machine, and there's a ton more stuff in the ENA archive, but I don't have access to it, and I'm an old tired man, and I don't even want to try anymore because I wasted so much of my life on that stuff, and there was that. God, were they called the video heads? There was that thing there was a video of the Softs in Hyde Park in '69. Did Eugenie tell you that story about contacting them? And
well, my takeaway was that they wanted too much money, right?
Well, what we tried to do is like, look, send I want to hear. I mean, you've got this thing on YouTube, and it's really hard to tell how the sound is. I mean, I know the visuals are terrible, but how is the sound? And I paid £100 to get 3 minutes, and it sounded exactly like the like what's on the YouTube, which I assume they just copied what they had on 3 minutes on the YouTube and sent it to me. It's just like, all right, well, it was only £100, but it's like, I don't foresee any more stuff coming. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff from Dave Stewart, and that's not going to happen. And as far as the others, I mean, I don't think there's another Gilgamesh album out there. I don't think that. I mean, there are things, but they're either in somebody's attic or they're in an archive, and they're not available, and it just. I don't know. Of course, then again, you never know till it shows up.
All right.
Yeah, there's TV stuff that turned up even recently, like this Caravan live in Montreux '72 that turned up, which was unexpected.
Yes.
There's possibly some in the TV archive stuff that hasn't been digitized yet. That's my main hope, I'd say.
But I mean, of course, the longer we are away from 1972, the harder it is to find anyone. I mean, at this point, it's like, who would I ask about a Soft Machine record? It's like it's harder and harder and harder. I'm not. I mean, it's like I've been contacted by Mike Ratledge's family, and I'm holding the money in escrow. But I've been holding the money in escrow for them for over a year. I hope that it gets settled and somebody gets back to me. I will pay. But I mean, it's like, am I going to ask the people who asked me to hold it in escrow if I can do something else that I can then hold in escrow? I mean, and it just gets less fun when it gets less fun when everybody's dead. Quite honestly.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. Well, guys, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun having this conversation.
Thank you.
And for the viewers at home, go check this out. It's available from waysidemusic.com. And it is available from some European distributors like Burning Shed. Where did you get it from, Pontus?
What I did was actually order it from something called Mondi.
Belgium.
Yeah, Belgium. They call it the Mondi distribution. And they sent me the book in a shoebox, which was very well. It was very well done, the packaging and all that. But in the actual shoebox, there was a leaflet for the shoes as well. So I'm gonna talk to my doctors and see if I get some of those. I'm a bit paralytic, so I get special shoes. So I'm gonna bring that to them and see what they can do.
Mondi are very, very nice people and have been caring.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
They're very fantastic. Actually, was it last year? Yes, last year I was on holiday with my family in Prague, and I got to meet the guy at Mondi. He was in Prague at the same time. It was great.
They were really great to talk to, and they were. So I highly recommend them to people in Europe.
Oh
so
yes,
go
absolutely.
to Mondi and buy the stuff, because it's very expensive to get those things over here.
Sure.
And they
but that's not your fault. That's other people's fault, right?
Yeah. The only way to get it in Europe, continental Europe, is actually from them, and from the UK it's Burning Shed, and in the US it's from Steve. It's pretty exclusive. When you live a certain place, there's one place to get it from.
Right. But I have all our catalog and have had it for 20 or 25 years, maybe longer. And they're totally nice folks, and everybody gets paid, which is nice. And it's mandai.be. If you're anywhere in the European Union and you'd like the book, that's the place.
Yeah. And if you're into progressive music or funny music, you should get this. You should get this.
I'd like to remind our viewers that I am going to leave actually all 3 links to purchase the book in the description. of this video. And I believe Steve and I are going to collaborate officially on this video. So if you go to the subscribe bar, there will also be the option to subscribe to Cuneiform Records YouTube page. And should there be further releases of the Canterbury Scene world, that's one place you'll be able to find out about it. And in addition to that, I think I'm also going to leave a link to the Cuneiform Records Bandcamp page, because a lot of this stuff that we've talked about today may or may not be available physically, but I believe all of it is available digitally. So go check it out and cross-reference and find out.
Yes, everything is available digitally.
Good to know.
And there are even, in some cases, there are some things that only came out digitally, like the is it called Improvisations by Hugh and Alan?
Bracknell Breath.
Bracknell Breath. Thank you. Bracknell Breath. You know, which is strictly a digital release from us, and there probably may be others. You know.
Well, thanks again, Aymeric Leroy, for joining us today. Thanks again, Steve, for joining us and putting out this great book. Thanks, Pontus, for co-hosting with me. And guys, hope to have you on again real soon. All right. Take care, and good luck with the book, friends.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great time.